For smaller businesses, many times specificity is very important. Getting clear what makes you special and different that's valuable to those customers is really important. And then putting your effort and your money in very specific places, not spreading it out broadly. And so you got to start with who are you trying to influence and where are you trying to influence them to make sure you don't spread it out too far and too wide.
Gerry, thank you so much for joining me on the Let's Talk Business podcast.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
This has been so long in the making. We connected first. You spoke at our 2015 Let's Talk Business Summit. It was a knockout of an event because you spoke about marketing. You came from a background being in corporate, understanding how they've done some successful campaigns, which we'll talk about. And then I followed your journey afterwards and recently saw that you launched a new book. And I said, you know what, we got to bring you on the show. And we got some back and forth about getting it scheduled, but I'm happy we're talking now.
Wonderful. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Sure. So for our listeners that don't remember that event, or obviously a lot of listeners joined our platform since, tell us a little bit about your past history as far as how you got into marketing in the first place and ultimately what you're currently doing.
Excellent. So I started out my career in marketing actually at Procter Gamble. I got my master's in business at University of Michigan and was lucky enough to get my first job in marketing at Procter Gamble, and then moved on to become the brand manager of Coors Lite. And you probably are familiar with things that I launched, especially like the bottle with the mountains that turn blue when it's cold enough to drink, the Coors Light can that turns blue when it's cold enough to drink. And then went on to companies like Red Robin Gourmet Burgers and Quiznos. And for the last 13 years, I've been a professional speaker and I've created a framework of influence. How do you influence people to buy from you versus everyone else in really crowded, competitive markets? And this is for people that are tiny little businesses, big businesses, medium, old businesses, new businesses. It doesn't matter. What we started out doing is taking the strategies from billion-dollar brands and applying it to small businesses. And over the last 13 years, I've created this framework that has been used by hundreds of companies over time to figure out how to influence their customers to buy from them in really crowded, competitive markets.
So I want to go back to a couple of things you mentioned because a lot of times when you speak to people that started off in corporate executives and P&G is one of the, a lot of great talent came out of that organization, in particular in the marketing world. I follow a lot the CMO podcast with who is the host of that show? I forgot the name in a moment, but obviously he was one of the marketing directors at P&G. And there's a lot of guests that he has on the show from other now CMOs of large companies that maybe started off in P&G. But I guess the question I wanted to ask, and I think you mentioned it in by passing when you mentioned about your framework, and the framework works big businesses and small businesses alike, is because a lot of small businesses say that, I'm outbid by large companies because they have larger budgets than me and they are able to put a lot of money behind branding or marketing. What is your response when a small business owner tells you that?
First of all, the question is starting at how much money do we need to spend? Most of the businesses that I work with, they generate most of their business through referrals, through being introduced from other people, and honestly, through specificity, through narrowing their focus to who is perfect for them. But the framework that I teach actually talks about, well, number one, who are you influencing? Number two, what are their insights? Number three, what's the promise, the outcome that you're going to deliver? And number four, what's the proof about why you're better? Well, as you think about influencing someone, just because a bigger company has a bigger budget is sort of like putting the cart before the horse. The first question for a business owner to ask is, okay, of all the clients I already have, where did they come from? And how would I find more people like the people I already have? And many times that answer isn't by doing marketing externally out to the big, broad world. It's by getting into very specific niches and places where people value what you have. The bigger question I would ask is, what does your business bring to the table that that bigger competitor doesn't bring, that they can't bring, that they don't do? Just because they're bigger, the perception might be that they're better. But is that actually true? And if it's not true, how do you convince me? So for smaller businesses, many times specificity is very important. Getting clear what makes you special and different that's valuable to those customers is really important. And then putting your effort and your money in very specific places, not spreading it out broadly. And so you got to start with, who are you trying to influence and where are you trying to influence them, to make sure you don't spread it out too far and too wide. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I like what you said about what learning from the big businesses. I remember a couple of years ago, I wrote an article which is called "I Love My Junk Mail." And I actually, in that article, the premise of the article was that sometimes you could see these amazing pieces come through your mail from these large corporations that went through so many bureaucracy and so many different hands in order to get that piece in the mail. And you, as a small business owners, you could pivot and you could be so much more agile in your marketing, but you still need strategy. You can't just
Yes.
copy somebody else's work. You need to have strategy and so on and so forth, so I like what you said on that. So let me ask you, because your framework and the book that you launched is called "They Buy You Because," and then closing
Yep.
the sale
Here,
in the crowd.
I'll hold up a pic. I got it right here.
Oh, here
They
we
buy
go.
your because, there we go.
Okay, "They Buy Your Because," again, and obviously closing the sale in the crowded market, which obviously from a marketing genius like you, this is carefully crafted. So I want to ask you two pieces. One is, what's that because? And second of all, let's talk about closing a sale in a crowded market, because we all suffer from that.
Good question. So they buy your because. The number one mistake that companies make in their marketing and sales process is, and you'll see this all the time, I see it with all my audiences, they have a good idea of who they're trying to sell to. They know some things about what those people want, their insights. What do they want more of or less of, or what are they frustrated about? Question number one, who are you influencing? Question number two, what are their insights? What do they care about? What are they frustrated about? Question number three, we are really good at this one. What's the outcome you promise to them? What promise do you make? We're going to deliver higher quality. We're going to deliver a better product. We're going to deliver great service. We make these promises for a restaurant. Our food is delicious, right? These are promises. These are things that we promise to deliver. We are really good at companies, at businesses, at making promises. What we're not good at is question number four, your because. Our product is higher quality because we deliver better service than any of our competitors. Because if we make a promise and we don't finish that sentence of influence with the proof, the because, everything we say sounds like marketing fluff. Everything we say sounds like the sea of sameness. And so if you know who you're going after, you know what their frustrations are, you know the promise you're going to make, we must figure out, what do we do? What does our business do differently than all the other businesses that's valuable to our customers, that proves that promise? The number one mistake is that we don't insert the proof, and everything we say doesn't sound compelling. That's your because. Your because is the proof about you, about what you do versus what everyone else does. And if you do the same things that everyone else does, you haven't given me any good reason to choose you. You've just made me more confused. And I don't want to be confused. The number one thing your customers want is certainty that they are making a good call. If I'm going to buy from you versus the other company that looks a lot like you, what proof are you going to give me that gives me certainty? That's what I'm looking for. And that's what your because delivers, is the certainty that you will provide and deliver the promise that you make.
This is great, and I think it's so important because like you said, a lot of times you could see businesses just say we're number one at this and we're number who knows what at that, or or quality, service, and price meet us, whatever, all these like very
Yeah, we have great
vague.
selection. Yeah.
Yeah. And the problem, like you said, is we're already used to those things, and we live in a world that these things are so easy to find out. With the Google review, we could see exactly how your clients feel about your service and so on and so, or your selection.
Yep.
So it's important that we, like you said, the proof that we put to that question is from an exercise perspective, and maybe some of it is in the book, but maybe you could share some of it now with our audience. Is where do you feel is the strongest? Because is it something that we find our clients tell us about our service? Is it something that we feel our process gives us something different? Like, what is it?
Well, it's a great question. And be careful, because I could talk about this all day. It's literally my whole life is spent helping businesses find their powerful becauses. Let me give you a couple of hints, and then I'm going to tell you where to find becauses in your company. Let me start out by saying that in the book, not that I'm promoting the book, but the answer to your question is so interesting. It varies by company, by industry, by whether you're a B2B company, a B2C company, professional services. There are 17 ways to create becauses, and they're all outlined in the book with case studies and everything. So let me give you a couple of really good ways to get started. Number one, when I work with companies and I say, well, why would I buy from you? What I should buy from you because, well, by the way, this is a great exercise to do. Write down the first half of this sentence. You should buy from us versus our competitors because that's the first half of the sentence. Now, have all the listeners out there write down the last half of the sentence. What is your because? You should buy from us versus them because. And now I want you to look at what you wrote down and say, any of our competitors have just said the same thing. If yes, you haven't helped me choose you. You've just made me more confused. And remember, I don't want to be confused. I want certainty. So if the ending of your sentence sounds the same as what other people could say, that's where we get to work. And then we'll say, well, Gerry, they should buy from us because we're just better, right? I say, okay, now that's not going to sell anything. So let's think about that. And then I ask you this question. What do you do that allows you to be so good at what you do? Well, we're just better. Okay, well, what are the things that you do in your business that allow you to be so good at what you do? What are the actual things, activities, processes, training? What is it that you do that makes you so good? And then they go, well, and then they start naming off becauses. Well, we do this. And so list all the things that you do that make you so good at the things that you do. Then write all those things down. And then I want you to ask another question. Do any of your competitors do the same thing? Because if your list, you got 10 things that you do that no one else, that you think people love, and 6 of them, other people do it too, then those 4 are the becauses that start to become valuable.
Let me ask you, let me just ask you a follow-up question on this is, could you have multiple becauses that you use in multiple different scenarios?
I love it. You asked me the best questions. Yeah, that's actually a really important question. Yes. Now, because I work with businesses across dozens and dozens of different types of businesses. Some businesses have a short sales cycle. Someone sees your thing and they buy it. Most of the businesses I work with have longer sales cycles where they might be in a conversation from the time someone knows you exist to the time they sign the contract or give you the money. It might be weeks or months, and there might be multiple people involved in the sales process. Sometimes we're selling to someone who needs to then sell to someone else, and we're not even there. They need to convince someone else. They need to give our because to someone else, and we're not even in the room. So each time you use the framework, who are you influencing? What are their insights? What is the promise you're going to make? What's the because? You might have multiple different becauses in your company. We sometimes at companies will brainstorm 50, 60 becauses. Then we narrow them, and usually A handful of them are the big, valuable, important ones that are unique to your business, but you might use them at different parts of your sales flow. You might use them in different messaging at different times. Sometimes I always ask people if their website is an important component of their business. Some businesses, no one ever goes to the website. Other businesses, it's their whole business. This is true for all your marketing materials, but your website is a good example of it. What do you want whoever is visiting your website, what do you want them to think and to do first, second, third, fourth when they show up? And we have to think strategically about our messaging and our journey. And so your best because it should go first and then second. And you might have 10 more that you only get to if you're really diving in and you want to learn more, right? And so you can have lots of becauses. Very good question.
Thank you for that. Now, one of the pitfalls I see, and obviously as PTEX, we also have a branding marketing agency, and this is something when we work on the brand narrative, we work on that. And one of the things like I always love hearing from our clients is that the conceptual development was so strong that our salespeople are using it verbally when they speak to people, not only in our messaging on our website. And I say that's exactly what we intended it should be. You can't have multiple messaging, like it can be disconnected. It is a connected message. But I guess the pitfall we see is when we speak to clients and we ask them about, let's call it, what's unique about them. A lot of brands or companies will give me the first version of that would be stuff that are really, we're very mission driven, or we our why is we're not just in this business for the money. We're in this because of XYZ, or we have this process, and they don't connect the dots of what's in it for your customer in this process. I would love to hear your feedback about how much of the because is related to the client's buying versus the mission of the company and anything like that.
Unbelievable. It's like you're asking me the questions these questions come up all the time, but here's how this one comes up. Because you're asking it because you experience this all the time from people.
Sure.
And here's one of the reasons I think that we all experience this is we're all trying to be good for the world, inspirational. We're in this world of we're trying to. I think some of it was driven because in the last decade, Simon Sinek is out there saying we must start with our why we do what we do. I actually talk about this in my book, and people say, "Oh, Gerry, you're because." That's sort of like your why. Your why is basically your mission statement, right? And Sinek talks about this in his book, and it's very inspirational, especially many times for your employees or for you to be continue the motivation. But it's your mission statement. Here's why we're doing what we do. But when you're selling something to someone who's about to give you money, sign a contract, make a big purchase commitment that they want certainty it's a good call, you'd be lucky if people are interested in why you are in, pick your unsexy industry. I work in plumbing, auto repair, home building, engineering, accounting. I work across all these industries, right? Nobody cares why you're an accountant. They care what you do for them and how you do it differently than everyone else. They care about the proof that you're going to deliver what's in it for me. People are inspired by why you do what you do, but people give you the money because of what you do for them.
Sure.
And how you do that differently than everyone else. And so I am 100% in agreement with you. One is inspiration, the other closes the sale. And the because is 100% focused on closing the sale. It's about what you do that's unique, that is also valuable to me.
Got it. So I want to touch on about the second part of the title of your book, which is the crowded market part, because once you could have a phenomenal because, you could have multiple becauses for different parts of your sales process, but the person still needs to still know about you, that you exist. And when you're competing with larger companies in the space, you're competing with so much noise out there. How do you overcome that from your perspective?
So And now this, like we've said, varies because every listener is going to have a different kind of company and a different way that they're going to reach out. Some will reach out through social media. Some will be through LinkedIn messages. Some will be through, could be trade publications, could be through any number of ways we actually reach out to get new clients. But, I'll give you an example that's just kind of food for thought for all the listeners. When I was the vice president of marketing at Red Robin, I would get, uh, I don't know, 10, 15 phone calls a week from people trying to sell me something because I was the VP of marketing at a $1 billion brand, right? So that's people are reaching out all the time. And this is direct one-on-one outreach, right? That's an example of how some of your listeners might be reaching out. We're going to reach
Sure.
out through LinkedIn or email or whatever. And my voicemail on my phone, because this is when people used to call people, would say, if you're reaching out, I don't return phone calls, but if you email me, I will email you back. 100% of people that ever emailed me to try to sell me something, I emailed them back. I always emailed them back with the same question. So this is where it gets good for the listeners. I emailed them back. I'm a marketing guy, right? Half the people that were reaching out to me were marketing agencies, research agencies. They're all trying to sell me, right? Excuse me. Sorry, I'm just getting over being a little under the weather. So I would reach out to them and I would say, why would I buy from you versus the other 10 people that reached out to me this week? And I would wait to see their response. I was essentially asking them for their because, right? So I only took like 3 meetings ever, and one of them landed me as a major client. It was a research company, and this is actually in the book. It was a research company that emailed. Now I was the head of research, but I didn't have any budget, but I wanted to know all these things. Research company emailed me back and said, we do something that no other research company does. We do unlimited research studies for you for one fixed price. What? I set up a phone call, I talked to them, and I became a client. So my question to answer your question is, do you have a because that is powerful enough, unique enough, and valuable enough that if your ideal customer saw it, they would say, well, that's interesting. I actually need to engage with them. Our problem probably isn't spreading our message far enough. It's having a good enough message so those specific people that we really want think it's useful to engage with the message. So I'm 100% with you. You got to get the message out.
This is
But
so true. Like I always tell people that when they do have to do cold calls or even outreach, sometimes you reach a person. Oh, I'm busy. I don't even have 5 minutes. And all of a sudden, if there's something in it for them, and it starts becoming interesting, all of a sudden they might even send their assistant, "Hey, push off my next meeting. I'm having just a great conversation. What happened?"
right.
Because
Well, can I tell you a story about this?
sure, sure,
So there's a company that I worked with, and actually this case study, this is interesting. This case study is in the book too. They sell what's called an adjuvant, which is an additive to glyphosate, which is Roundup, right? So we're talking about farmers, big farms spray weed control, right? Well, what's happened is there's been no innovation in weed control since the 1960s. And there's all these weeds and pests that now can't be killed by Roundup. It's a massive problem. Okay. This company created an additive that will kill 200 things that Roundup by itself can't kill. But the co-ops, which is who sells this stuff to farmers, don't want any salespeople calling them. Right. So the question is, how do you give them that message that then, like you just said, gets you into that conversation so they want to talk to you? Right. So this is what your listeners might be struggling with. Like, I can't break through. I can't get to the people. Now, my framework is, who are you influencing? Insights, outcome, because, okay, who are we influencing? We're trying to get to decision makers at farm co-ops. They won't let us get through. And okay, well, what are our insights? They all have receptionists, and the receptionists are told, don't let any salespeople through. Don't let them talk to me. Right. So that's what we're up against. Well, we need more insights, right? What are the other insights? Well, turns out we learn the receptionists have been working there forever. They're in small farm communities. They know all the farmers. They know everybody. The receptionists know what's going on. They've been there forever and they know their job is don't let people through. So we started to get in the mindset of the receptionist. Well, it turns out the receptionists like to be helpful. They like people to think that they're smart and know what's going on because they do know what's going on. So we would call up the receptionist, and we created this using my framework with this major company that makes this stuff. And they would call the receptionist and say, "Hey, what are the big like nightmare weeds that your farmers are dealing with up there?" And they would say, "Oh, we got mare's tail and we got pigweed. Can't kill them. Can't kill them. It's killing the farmers. It's killing the farmers." Oh, oof, those have been a problem. We hear those are a problem all over the whole Southwest. Yeah. Oh yeah, terrible. We've got a brand new patented product, just got patented 6 months ago, that will kill both of those. So who would I talk to there about coming down and running a test in your market? Well, you should probably talk to so and so. And they passed us straight through to the decision maker because we got smarter about the mindset of the person that we were trying to influence. So, what do you know about the person you're trying to break through? If we don't get a yes, we haven't gotten smart enough about one of the parts of the framework. We need better insights to understand what's on their mind. What is the real problem that they can't solve that they don't think we can solve, but turns out we can solve it. They just didn't know it, right? And I tell those stories because my intention is that they will inspire the listeners to go, well, what would be my version of that in my industry? Who am I getting stuck with? And what do they really care about? Do I really know what they really care about?
So true, so true. I want to shift the conversation. I think this has been amazing. So, whatever you mentioned now, it's very much applicable to service-based businesses or selling one-on-one, where we have the opportunity to do this. Obviously, your background is working with these large brands, which are sitting on a shelf.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of our listeners also have products that are sitting on shelves in big box retail or now online.
Oh, nice.
And
Yeah.
how do you convert this framework when you don't have one-on-one selling, but obviously your packaging or any of your marketing needs to sell?
Well, and it varies depending on how your product ends up being sold. Like, for example, let's say that, like, just as an example, shoe companies it's a very consultative sale, right? Like, if you're going to the running store, there is a person helping you pick out which of the 100 shoes is the right shoe for you. In others, if you're at like a Walmart or something, there's no consultative help, right? It's just shelf space. So, from a packaging standpoint, that gets to be tricky. Number one is your priority of communication, just like we talked about for the website. What do you want people to know and do first, second, and third when reading your package? One mistake is that, especially now, depending like with food products, especially, there's so many things we want to say. You can't say them all at once, and you got to optimize the progression of what you say and when and where. And there's all these regulations around what you also have to say and where you have to say it, right? So there's some parameters. So what do you want to say first, second, and third? And you have to look at that in the context of the shelf set, right? Of what everyone else is saying in terms of the colors, the messaging, the everything. And by the way, you need to know the insights of the people looking at the shelf. So it's still, you're influencing these people. What are their insights? What are they looking for? And what order do you want to put your becauses in on the packaging? Now, some people are trying to get through distribution or get the retailer to carry their product at all. So the framework works the same regardless if you're influencing a consumer, a retailer, a distributor. It doesn't matter who you're influencing. But you have to use the framework over and over individually for each one. So let's say the retailer is like, well, I don't know if I should carry your product. Well, we know what retailers care about. This is a simple one, right? They care about turns and they care about margin and they care about, profitability of each foot of their shelf space. And they care,
Sure.
right? So they're simple people that, they don't care about your product at all. They care about themselves, right? So what are you going to do to promise them or to demonstrate or to give them proof that your product is going to turn, that it's going to turn without them that you're going to support it, that you're going to do promotional support, that you're going to do, what are you going to do outside of them to make sure that it turns? What testing have you done to make sure that it turns in retailers like mine, right? So the framework is the same, but when it comes down to an actual package, it's tough. You got a limited time, limited space, you got color, you got language, you got font, you got priority of communication. That's pretty much what you got.
Okay, let me ask you another question on this topic, which is on the marketing side, because like you said, you have been around for a long time, and we live in a world that, to get people's attention is so hard, especially if you're speaking about social media with video and ad spend and so on and so forth. How do you shine in a crowded market today's day and age? And specifically, to ask you a specific question is, you see, especially companies with smaller budgets, they don't have the opportunity to go all out, multiple mediums, multiple platforms, and so on and so forth to get the message out. They have to they have limited budgets. What is your recommendation speaking to a client that's launching a new product or a service?
Oh, I'm glad that you asked this too, because, and I talk with clients about this all the time, and especially my audiences. The smartest thing that business owners can do, especially when they're small, especially when they're launching, specificity matters. Specificity and narrowing your focus is like magic. And here's why. First of all, if you specialize in solving the specific problem I have, if this is what you do, I believe that you can solve my problem. My trust for whatever you're telling me goes up. You shortcut my decision making. If you've got a thing, a product, a service that could serve anybody, but you narrow your focus, especially at first, it doesn't mean that you only can serve these people. But if you narrow your focus narrow enough, you will make your marketing budget more focused. You will make your target universe more focused. You'll save money and you'll increase your likelihood that they believe you because you have insights about this narrowly focused group of customers. So the more you can narrow your focus, the faster you will grow. Years ago, I worked with a gentleman who was a certified auto mechanic. He'd opened up a little 2-bay auto repair shop and he couldn't get any customers to come in. So he did a whole bunch of marketing 3 miles around. He thought, oh, 3 miles around, everyone's going to get their car fixed here. And he put out door hangers for a discounted oil change. Dang, all the people came in for an oil change and nobody came back. But he said, you know what I realized is a lot of people in the neighborhood drive Audis and Volkswagens. So he narrowed his focus. He changed his entire website, his whole presence. Before social media was a big thing. And he said, we service Audis and Volkswagens. That's it. That's what we do. And he tripled his business in 18 months.
Wow.
And think about the other things that specificity does. It makes your business more efficient. It increases your margins because people think that you're a specialist, right? It increases your word of mouth referrals because all the people with Volkswagen say, oh, you got to go over to this guy. He does it cheaper than the dealership. He's got certified people that go to Volkswagen training. Faster and more efficient if you service less kinds of cars, right?
Wow.
So how do you leverage specificity and narrowing your focus to save money, to increase your close rate, to narrow your universe, to make your business more efficient? That's by far the smartest thing people can do.
Let me ask you a final question on our interview. It's just getting late. We could speak for hours. I
Yeah,
think we're going to have to do a part 2 on this one.
I know, right? It's good. It's good.
What is something that comes to mind that small businesses could learn from large brands, how they approach branding and marketing?
The number one thing that big companies do more effectively than small companies is they are extraordinarily purposeful about listening to their customers, learning from their customers, gathering insights, asking good questions. Especially, you want a good one? If you thought you were getting a customer, and this would be for people that are in like more of a one-on-one, and then they went with somebody else, they chose someone else for their whatever, professional services, whatever. Go to those people and find out why they chose the other person. Those are valuable insights. Go to your people using your competitor product and find out why they're using them versus you. Those are valuable insights. Foundation of all influence is understanding the mindset of customers that you serve. It's like that additive example with the co-ops. If we didn't know the mindset of the person we're influencing, we never could have been influential. The number one thing big companies do that small companies don't do is spend a lot of time listening and learning from their customers. And it's easy. All you have to do is ask them, do surveys, do one-on-one interviews. I mean, there's lots of ways to get the information you're looking for.
Mhm. This is so true, and I know that because I've been speaking to our team, and I've been speaking to other businesses about listening, and sometimes you get phenomenal insights from that potential, but other times you eat yourself up what you did wrong, and you find out that's nothing about you.
Oh,
Totally.
it's so
Which is
true.
also good. It's also good because sometimes you had such a bummer, like you had this sale, you thought you're gonna get it, all of a sudden, well, one of the partners' brother does the same service, and he said, "You know what? I veto everything. I just gotta go with my brother."
Yep. You know what? Sometimes you're going to get up against something you can't solve.
Sure,
You can't because it's a relative or it's a this or it's a that or they're not. Sometimes people make bad decisions in their business.
sure.
And we can't stop people from making bad decisions to buy from someone who's not as good as you. But the framework, who are you influencing? What are your insights, outcomes, becauses? If you're getting a no and it's not from something outside of you, that means that one of the parts of the framework is broken.
Exactly.
Either you're not targeting the right people, you don't understand their mindset, you don't have a good promise outcome, or your becauses aren't believable, right? One of those things is broken. So
Exactly.
keep going through it again and again and again. And eventually you'll figure it out, but you got to have all those things in order to get a yes.
Beautiful. How could people find out more about the book and about yourself?
So it's the book is called They Buy Your Because. It's on Amazon. Just type it in, it'll pop right up. And my website is whatbigbrandsknow.com. And it's Gerry O'Brien with an O-N, Obrion. And come to the website. If you get the book, there's a whole website that goes with the book with videos and all sorts of instructional stuff. And I will say, if you buy the book and you email me the receipt, I will send you the worksheets that I use for my executive CEO roundtable groups to actually start them implementing the framework. We didn't get into it, but there's these 17 ways to create becauses. All of those are included in the worksheets, and I'll show you exactly how to use them. So I can give some freebies if you guys go out and buy the book. The book is a resource that you can use. It is instructional. It is not just a theoretical book. It walks you through exactly how to use the framework.
It's amazing. It's amazing. For the links, resources mentioned in this episode, check out the show notes at www.ptexgroup.com/podcast, where we'll link to the book and we'll link to the websites of our guests today. So you don't have to remember all the URLs and the domain names that we just mentioned. But this is amazing. I remember in 2015 when you were a guest speaker at our event, people were amazed at the clarity they got on how to approach the marketing. So I could imagine close 10 years, almost 10 years later with the book. So I definitely highly recommend people to go out and buy the book. Let's close with the 4 rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Number 1, a book that changed your life.
A book that changed my life. Good to great. Loved it. Well researched. I like examples of books that like know what they're actually talking about.
Yeah, love that book as well. Number 2, a piece of advice you got that you'll never forget.
Piece of advice, live in gratitude. And I do it every day.
Beautiful. Number 3, anything you wish you could go back and do differently.
Nothing really comes to mind. That's interesting. That's a good question. I don't know. Nothing pops into my head.
It's so funny, this question. So, like, about 50% of the guests will say no, like immediately. I don't regret anything. And then 50% of people will start thinking about maybe there's something there, but that's the question. You gave the answer. Nothing comes to
Yep.
mind.
Yeah.
And last and final question, what's still on your bucket list to achieve?
Oh, bucket list to achieve. I know what it's going to be. The last plank of my business, I'm going to start to have certified presenters of the Because framework. It is complete now. Now we just need to get it out into the world because it is so, when business owners use it, it changes their mindset about how to influence people. So I can't do it all myself. So I'm going to get people out there doing it so others can use this framework and teach it and make it go beyond me. That's the last phase of my business for my life.
That's great. Gerry, thank you so much for joining us. I know your time is valuable. That is why, in the name of our listeners, we'll forever be grateful for sharing some of your time with us today. It's been a blast.
Thank you so much. Have a great one.
My pleasure.